Welcome to the Send Podcast. I am Tali Carr, where we like to cover sports, entertainment, news, and drama. And our guest today, I think he has all four of these categories covered pretty well. Definitely sports, definitely entertainment. He gives you the news, and in what we're going to get into his previous life, there was plenty of scripted drama. We're joined now by Chris Lea. He's a sportscaster at WXII-TV in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He also hosts a weekly show on 102 Jams in Greensboro, and formerly a professional wrestler. So, Chris, the big question is, how do you fit all of that into one life? That's like 3 lives into one.
Well, thank you for having me on, Dolly. One thing is, I don't have to fit in wrestling anymore because I haven't done it. I pretty much stopped back in November, just mainly because contractually I was told to stop. So I don't have to worry about that. But as far as radio and television, luckily, the radio show is only 2 hours a week, so it doesn't take up too much time. And the rest is just, as you know, sports and the news life keeping you extremely busy. So
you're doing radio, you're doing TV. How did this start for you? One day you have to say, like, this is something that I want to do, and you got to figure out how to do it, and you got to make the connections, and you got to get it done. How did you get your foot in the door, and how did it all, get rolling for you?
So there's a lot of different twists and turns to my career. Like, nothing that I've done has been traditional in any sense of the word. So I've always wanted to be involved in television and radio and wrestling in some capacity since I was a little kid, probably since like 2 or 3. So that passion has always been there. Fast forward, when I was 16, I started doing a program every summer at the Greensboro News and Record called the Minority Journalism Workshop. And I did some stuff with them for every summer, 2 summers. And then the summer when I was 18, heading into college, I was actually offered a job to be a sports editorial assistant. And so I would help lay out a sports page there, and then go cover some sports, soccer games or high school basketball or football or D3 football that the main reporters didn't want to do or didn't have time to do. And so I kind of got my foot in the door that way of reporting sports for print. At the same time, while I was in college, I was interning at 102 Jams in Greensboro, and also had my own radio show in at UNCG, WAG 103.1. And I became the intern that, Kyle Centillion and BDOT and Africa would all pick on. So I kind of became a character on the show, which got me hired at 102 Jams when I was 21, when I was still a junior in college. And then I did a few things for MTV in college to keep it short. And then I was also, and this is not to toot your horn, but I was looking at you and doing radio and doing television. I was like, wow, there's another black guy, another light-skinned black guy who's doing that. It definitely makes it possible to do it at the same time. And and I kind of took a little break from television for a while and eventually got back at WXI, and then now I'm doing sports. So it's been kind of like a twist and turn, but I have a lot of different parts of my story that are interesting.
Well, man, I'm so glad that I wasn't brown skinned, because then you would have just not been inspired at all. Just playing. And you can toot my horn all you want to, man. That's awesome. You've blazed your own path for sure. All right. So look, talking with Chris Lea here on the podcast today, how much free did you have to do? Like, how much grinding did you have to do where there wasn't a paycheck necessarily involved, but you were putting in the work that was going to put you in the position that you wanted to be and that you needed to be to succeed?
A bunch. For sure, before I ever got hired at 102 Jams on a part-time basis, it was a year and 7 months. And then even while I was hired, there's a lot of work that I did that didn't go onto my timesheet. So it's probably impossible to count out the actual amount of time that was free. But, it's I would say I was not paid or underpaid from about 16 to about 27. So it was a long time. Underpaid and not paid, but it was a combination of both. Because sometimes you just kind of have to, there's a point like, I was getting paid, but it wasn't anything substantial. And you do extra work to make sure that somebody sees you. If you really want something bad enough, you'll take those sacrifices, and you'll go out and you'll do things and try to prove your worth to other people, and just so you can get the right opportunities. And so it's kind of led me to here right now.
So how cool is it to keep both flames going there? You have the TV, which is your main job now, but still being able to do radio at least once a week. How cool is that for you?
I love it because I've never seen myself as just one person. I'm not a radio guy. I'm not a television guy. I'm not a pro wrestler. But all of the stuff that I've done and that I'm into kind of encompasses who I am as a person. There's so many different interests. So many different ways that I want to touch people and inspire people, and so it's great. It makes me feel more complete. I don't think that, like, even if I was doing just radio, I wouldn't feel complete. And if I was doing just television, I wouldn't feel complete. And having a footing in both definitely is something that's exciting for me.
All right, we like to talk sports, entertainment, news, and drama here on the podcast. Chris, I was a huge wrestling fan growing up, and I'm a little bit older than you. So, I mean, Ric Flair, Wahoo McDaniel, Superfly Snuka, Road Warriors, all those guys. Like, I loved wrestling, but I never had any dreams of getting in the ring and actually doing it. And I knew that was something I couldn't do. How do you go about figuring out that you're going to be a wrestler, and how did that happen for you?
Okay, so I've always wanted to do wrestling at some point in life. And then when I turned 18 and I realized that I'm pretty skinny, I weigh like 155, and I'm 5'9". I don't think that I'm quite cut out physically to be a wrestler. I don't know. I think I kind of figured I'd end up being 6'2" and maybe 210 pounds of muscle. That didn't happen for me. And so I think I made a decision to kind of just go after the radio thing. Fast forward about 8 years till I was 26. I started, I met a bunch of wrestlers and noticed a lot of guys were my size or just a little bit bigger or whatever. And I wasn't in television yet. I was not in a happy place in radio. And my main job was something I was not passionate about at all. And so I was kind of at this place in life where it was just like, I need to figure out what I want to do to make myself happy. What have I not tried yet? And how can I get there? And I knew I haven't had a full-time job in television, and I knew I hadn't become a pro wrestler. I haven't at least done it yet. And so I actually found a wrestling school that's close in the area. It was in Burlington, North Carolina. And I contacted them and introduced who I was. And, at first the guys were a little apprehensive because they didn't know if it was just me trying to do a radio stunt or whatever. But I proved to them that, hey, I wanted to actually become a wrestler. I'm actually into it. I actually like wrestling. It's not a stunt. It's not anything to try to expose anybody or whatever. And gained their trust, started training, and 4 months after I started training, I stepped into the ring for the first time, and it felt like home. And so it was pretty cool to do it and to get a chance to live out, my childhood fantasies, and then also be on shows that some of the same guys I grew up watching, or be in the ring with guys who I grew up watching. So that was pretty cool for me.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, when it comes to athletic ability, I have certainly wasted my 6'2", 210 pounds. I could have given it to you and probably taken your natural physique and done all the things that I've done in life with the same amount of ease. So I do apologize for wasting my 210. Give me your top 3 finishing moves that you have performed as a wrestler, and in case it's over, my head or the podcast head, explain the name of the move and what happens during that move.
Okay, so this one is really easy. If anybody's watched wrestling and they've seen Superfly Jimmy Snuka, he always did his Superfly splash off the top rope. And I did the same thing, and it was very much so inspired by him. Also had animal print on my tights because I was inspired by him. So I renamed it. Instead of the Superfly splash, I called it the Airwave splash, just to kind of play off of radio and television. So I did that. I also did a move that I used to be a traffic anchor, and I called this the traffic jam. It's kind of tough to explain. So imagine if do you know what a pump handle slam is?
No, let's see. Pump handles, is that where they put your arm through your leg and then like body slam you?
Yeah. So it's a similar setup to that. So your left arm goes through your leg, and I'm holding your left arm through your leg from behind with my left arm. My right arm is, I have a half Nelson on you, so that's going underneath your arm, through your armpit, and then my hand is resting on the back of your neck. So just imagine that. And so then I take you and with the left hand and from the back, and then also my right hand, I'm pushing down on your neck, and I basically do a flip. I flip you front ways and kind of drive your neck into the mat, along with, as I'm coming down with my left leg on your head. And I'll try to send you a video of that, so you can kind of get where it's at. But it looks pretty bad, and I call that the traffic jam. And then one of the moves that I think I made look really good is, I can't remember the exact name, but it's basically a roundhouse. It's basically a roundhouse kick. Everybody has seen it. Basically, I kind of go in air, and I do a 360, and I come around, and my right foot is going to come right there on your left cheek, and it looks pretty nasty. And I usually have pretty good aim, no matter how tall or short somebody is. So.
Well, all I can say, Chris, is with that traffic jam, just listening to you describe it, I feel violated.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough move. It's won me a championship. I'll say that. I won a championship off of that move. So.
All right, top 5 wrestlers of all time in no particular order. Who are your favorites? Top 5.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an order, but definitely The Rock. I would have to say Sting, The Ultimate Warrior, Bret Hart, and a newer guy who just retired, and his name is Daniel Bryan.
Okay, so with your Sting, is it the All-American, 4th of July, red, white, and blue Sting, or the Crow Sting?
Both.
Okay, and no Shawn Michaels on your list at all?
You know what's funny? I've never been a Shawn Michaels fan, and there's a reason for it. I think as I became a wrestler, I started more so appreciating how good he is in the ring as from a performance standpoint. But I'm still not over him turning on Marty Jannetty in 1991 when I was 5 and breaking up the Rockers. The Rockers is one of my favorite tag teams, and that was a heel turn that I really bought into. And just for the rest of the time while he was wrestling, I just didn't like him because I never forgave him for turning on Marty Jannetty, and I never could really care for Shawn Michaels. Like I said, after I became a wrestler, I started from an artistic and wrestling standpoint. I had a higher appreciation for him. But I couldn't stand him for a long time.
Okay, we're talking to Chris Lea here, and before I just rudely hang up on him for not acknowledging the greatness of Shawn Michaels, I'm going to explain to young buck here. Okay, now, all right, you're the pro wrestler and all that. You know how to do the that thing that made me feel violated. But if he did not, make his turn, go solo, we never have D-Generation X, which was the most entertaining thing on television besides, maybe Stone Cold. We just wouldn't have had it. Can you argue that point against me?
You're absolutely correct. I would have to say this to you though. I was a huge WCW fan. And so when the Monday Night Wars were going on, at the beginning, I was looking at WCW. And so this was the time of the NWO and all that type of stuff before DX kind of happened. And so I was into that. By the time Shawn Michaels left after WrestleMania 13, I believe, 14, after WrestleMania 14 when he left for a while, that's pretty much around the time where I switched over to WWE and was starting to get into that. So the DX that I liked was actually the DX that, was Triple H and X-Pac and, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. Like, that's the DX that I started getting into. And I did love that DX. So I kind of missed the first, making of DX basically because I was watching WCW.
Okay, so we're just going to forgive you because you don't know what you're talking about because you didn't see it because you're too young, so I will not hold that against you. One last thing for wrestling, because I know not everybody's into wrestling. So your bosses at the Big Dozen said, all right, you're our big superstar, sports anchor now, so no more wrestling for you. I'm telling you, Chris, go old school, talking to Chris Lea here. Get you a mask, man. Lucha Libre, old yellow dog like Dusty Rhodes used to do, and just go with the mask. Can we make that happen?
It's definitely something that a lot of wrestling promoters have offered me because they still wanted me to be involved. And that's something that other fans have offered as well, along with some of my wrestling friends because they still want me to be in the ring with them. I would think of that. However, I work on weekends, Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, and this is when most of the wrestling shows are going on. So I wish I could be two places at once, but I can't. And I've got to go with the money in this situation. So. All
right, so we can't blame him. I'm talking to Chris Lea here on the podcast today. I'm Tolly Carr. Thanks a lot for Chris for hanging out with us today. A really good guy, sports anchor in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He also hosts a public affairs radio show in Greensboro on Sunday mornings, and we've just discussed his wrestling career that ended too soon. Chris, when I was working in television, this was before social media. So if someone didn't like me, they would just call on the phone and have to insult me. So that didn't happen a lot because most people aren't built like that for direct confrontation. Now in this passive-aggressive world of social media, how do you handle just putting yourself out there every, day or whenever you're on the air? People can say whatever they want to say, be a keyboard gangster, and there it is for you because you have to be interactive on social media for the product that you're involved with. How do you handle all that in the modern news gathering era?
You know what? I'm an introvert, and so I'm very much so inwardly motivated. And a lot of times, whenever somebody has always said you can't do this or whatever, I remember going back when I was in high school, and when I would tell people I wanted to be on television, wanted to be on radio, I was the quiet guy, so they didn't understand it. So it was like, you can never do that. So I never got any of the superlatives, and the people that they thought were going to be on radio and television are nowhere close to it. And so that was one of those things, like the doubt, kind of fueled me. So as soon as I got to college, I was doing whatever I could do. And I think in this case, it's the same thing. And I have different motivations for it. One of the first, I remember there's a tweet that I got as soon as it was announced that I had the weekend sports job. And somebody tweeted something that was racial and basically said the only reason a white man doesn't have the job is because he was insulted by how low the position would pay. And so that's why they hired me. And so that's something I always kind of keep in the back of my mind, like, okay, like, this dude is watching, obviously. He doesn't have the guts to say that to my face. But I'm going to show him how great I'm going to do it and how great I'm going to do it with a smile. Every once in a while, I'll get a tweet from somebody who is saying something about, me and my performance or challenging something I said. And when it comes to sports, people love to, challenge, I guess, stats and other things like that. And so, or they feel like their team has been left out, or I didn't cover tennis amongst all this basketball or whatever. So it's one of those things for me, especially when it gets really bad. the worst ones, I like to print those out and I look at those for motivation. The other ones, I just kind of let it roll off my back, and it makes me more inwardly motivated to just do better. And I think that's something for me. I kind of like that. I kind of like the hate, because it makes me want to be that much more better. And so I let it roll off my back, but I don't get it that much. It's not a huge thing. I don't think I'm a polarizing person. So it's not, I don't get it as much as some people get it. So I'm thankful for that.
Well, Chris, you truly understand that to be successful in media, you have to be polarizing, man. We've got to work on you. You need to get out there and tick off some more people. I'm telling you, man, that's how it works. So what's next for you? I mean, you've split your pants on TV, and you've gone viral on social media. You know, you got all these different jobs going on. What is the next step for you? You don't strike me as a guy that just wants to kind of stay in one lane, going 55 miles an hour and just coasting for the rest of your career. What's on the horizon for you in your mind?
I feel like you already know me so well. That's a very complex question. I'm trying not to bore your viewers as far as how I'm going to answer this, but there's so many different levels of where I want to go. So I'll just kind of explain it all as quickly as I can. I want to, at some point, I want to do something on a higher level. I feel like I've done everything I've wanted to do. I've stepped in the ring. I've done radio. I've done television. I've recorded an album and put out an independent album. That was a rap album. So I've done the stuff that I've done a little bit of acting in high school. So I've done the things that have really interested me. Now I want to do something on a high level. I got a taste of that when I did some MTV shows in college. And so now with television, whether it's Fox Sports, ESPN, or a huge, market somewhere, I want to cover sports at a high level at some point, and then eventually get out. Because at some point I want to become an entrepreneur, have a few different businesses going on for a couple different reasons. One, I want to have something to pass on to my kids whenever I have kids. Two, I want to, with news, and I'm sure you know this and you remember this, living in the media life can definitely take away so much time from you and your family. And so I don't want to look up at 60 and have grown kids that I barely know. Not saying that that's how people are when who have kids in the media, but at the same time, I know how, what's required of me right now. And I think I want to have a little bit more time at home. Another thing is my wife is from Bermuda, and all of her family, mom, dad, brother, sister, all those people are in a whole nother country. So I would like to have the flexibility to go with her a little bit more than your 2 or 3, 4 weeks paid vacation. If we need to go for a month because somebody's sick, I want to have that ability to do that. And then also, at some point, I want my work to be something that inspires other people or helps out other people in some type of way. And I want to become a social entrepreneur to where whatever I have, whatever my business is, that a percentage of it goes to something that's really important, an important cause. Not quite sure what it is right now, but that's what I'm taking the time to kind of think about and get to that point where I'm sure what I want to do. Because I want to help change lives. I want to help make sure that that young African Americans are inspired to do what they do some great things with their lives, and and just to show us the options of what's out there outside of rapping and playing ball. And so that's what I want to do, and I want to be pretty much driven by motivating other people.
Chris, that's really good, man. I have to admit, I do have one burning question after hearing that, though. When was the first time you asked your wife if the Bermuda Triangle was a real thing?
I think whenever we first met and we had some time to actually really talk, she brought it up first because it was like one of those things. Like I just asked her about Bermuda and culture there and everything, and she was just kind of like, I'm glad he didn't ask me about the Bermuda Triangle, because so many people ask me if I get lost. And she's like, I've flown back and forth there so many times, like you would think it would have happened by now. But I'm not worried. I've been to Bermuda 5 times. I know that the actual triangle is just the area between Bermuda and Miami and Puerto Rico. But, it's hurricanes and things kind of come through the area and whatever. But other than that, I'm not worried about it. And it's not something that we talk about. It's, I don't even think that anything like that is real.
So you can confirm here on the Send podcast that the Bermuda Triangle is not a thing.
Yeah, as far as getting lost. Now, it is an actual triangle. If you look at the points between Bermuda and Miami and Puerto Rico, there is an actual triangle there, and that's usually the area that hurricanes tend to hit this area. But, it's other than that, I don't think anybody's going to get lost simply by coming through the triangle. So.
All right, so that makes up for you making me feel violated with your wrestling move. You have now solved one of my lifelong fears. So after 42 years, I can put the Bermuda Triangle to rest. I really appreciate that, Chris.
No problem. And maybe one day, you and the wife and the kids can join us out in Bermuda, and we can have a joint family vacation.
All right, that sounds good, man. Sounds good. All right, last minute that we have here. Out of your entire week, with all the things that you're involved with, and I know you do some sneak wrestling on the side. You can't fool me. So just be honest here. What is the most fun thing that you do in the course of your week? What is the most fun thing that you do?
I wish that I did still do some wrestling, but I don't. But I'm lucky enough to do things that's fun to me, for a living. I never feel like I'm working whenever I'm going to physically go somewhere to cover some sports or to talk about sports or whatever. There's a few parts of the job that feels like work when you have to produce and write your own show. That feels like work, but the actual performance part of it is fun to me. And the same thing for radio. Radio is fun, so I consider that fun. But also I like working out. So working out is very fun. And I like hanging out with my wife, so that's really fun too. I might sound boring with all of this, but that's truly fun for me to do all those things.
All right, folks, it's been a lot of fun with Chris Lea. If you're ever in North Carolina watching TV in the Triad, check him out every weekend. He'll give you the sports. And Sunday mornings on 102 Jams, always thought-provoking conversations there. And if you see a guy, let's see, I don't know, a little south of 6 foot and just a little stocky fire hydrant with a mask on at one of these local wrestling events, it is not Chris Lea. I can guarantee you he is not going back to wrestling with the mask, although if I was him, I would do that, because how many chances do you get in your life to be a pro wrestler? But Chris, thanks a lot for joining us on the show, man. I really appreciate it. And all the best to you, your family, and everything that you have in front of you as your career continues to unfold.
No problem. Thank you. And I will say this on your show. I didn't say I was done with wrestling. I'm just not doing it now. So there's still a possibility I could step into the ring, but the current contract I'm under prevents me from doing such. So,
all right, Masked Man coming to a high school auditorium near you. You heard it here first. There's no Bermuda Triangle, and Chris Lea will wrestle again.